Thank you for joining us once again in the basement of Bootleg Universe headquarters, where we are once again trying to teach you some things that we learned on the set of Guardians of Justice. I am Sam Lasky, one of the writer and producers of Guardians of Justice.
I'm Kenlon Clark. I'm one of the directors and editors of the Guardians of Justice.
And I'm Graham Hughes, lead designer and VFX artist.
And today we are going to be talking about one of the most important tools that we used in making Guardians of Justice, something that saved us a lot of time and money, and although in some ways complicated the process as well. We're going to be talking about stock footage, and how we use stock footage, how we added it to the show to enhance what we were doing. Because obviously Guardians of Justice was a fairly low budget production. We use animation, claymation, video game style 8-bit animation to enhance the world of what we shot, to expand it beyond the scope of the set. Stock footage is just another one of the tools in our arsenal. I'm going to play a clip here that just shows some of the stock footage that we got from Adobe stock footage and Motion Array. And when you think of stock footage, that's the main thing that people tend to think about, is going out to one of these websites and purchasing something that somebody else has shot. Ken, you love Motion Array, correct?
I love Motion Array. Yeah, I think it's a good deal, and I think the quality of their stock footage is
it's a
excellent.
Subscription service.
It's a subscription service, and they have a lot. So, obviously we're going to talk about footage, but there's also, using still photos, using templates for creating, or starting off to create some type of graphic or motion design thing, and then, making adjustments. So it has a lot of options.
So this is all stuff that we purchased. I'm going to go back to the beginning. And so Graham, you created this bullet shot using stock footage, correct?
Yeah. Everything is from the stock footage except for the actual bullet.
Okay. So what was there before you augmented it?
It was just a metal rod that they were like lathing. Decided, we wanted this blue crystal thing to be the Caltronite bullet, and I just rendered out
just a curve at the end.
Yeah, just a little cylinder with a bullet shape inside, and had them,
Yeah, and made it blue. And because we're not going to go out and film the making of a bullet or waste your time creating this entire shot. Right. Which you could have done. You could have built it in CGI.
To, waste a day on it, or we could just spend a few bucks and get a shot.
Do you remember how much roughly this costs?
I don't know. It was like probably $10 or something. Right. So not a big deal.
$10. And how long did it take you to alter the bullets?
Like a couple hours.
Okay.
So took what would have been like a couple day process and just turned it into like a few hours, and when we have like a good looking shot.
Now we have Denise Richards talking about how she drowned in Marvelous Man's shadow. We're very literal people here at Bootleg Universe.
That's what we typed into. Yeah.
But, we're not... The scene that surrounds us in episode 4 is Nighthawk talking to Laura Lewis in her home. They're just on a very basic home set. We weren't going to have an extra day of shooting to put Denise Richards underwater and film it with a phantom camera. So we purchased a hand reaching up through the water and a woman who looks close enough to Denise Richards in a 2-second shot floating in water. And then this next shot, so this is a claymation shot of Dr. Ravencroft's books burning. And then we put it in this stock footage of a TV, which Ken, you found. This was your concept.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just stock footage of a sledgehammer hitting a TV.
Mm-hmm.
Did you just search sledgehammer hitting a TV?
I think specifically, no. I think whenever you get these, there's always people throw little things in. So you'll like, oh, we're watching a TV, and then all of a sudden a sledgehammer comes in. So I think there may have been a little bit of like, oh, that would be cool. But that's the fun thing about even using a stock footage library, is that a lot of times you'll just be going through and seeing how some of this footage, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that actually sparks an idea to something you could do with your production. So.
And then this is probably the most expensive piece of stock footage we used, which is that tiger down in the corner. Adi Shankar was very emphatic that there had to be a tiger in this shot. So we went to greenscreenanimals.com and bought one image of one shot of a tiger that was on a green screen. Originally, Ken and I wanted to put a giant penguin, like a 7-foot tall penguin, because you just get a normal shot of a penguin, make it super huge, and a tiny elephant. Giant penguin on one side, tiny elephant on the other. Addie didn't think that was funny.
Right. Kind of more of a Dr. Moreau style weirdness.
But yeah, this is absolutely the most we ever paid for any piece of stock.
You're looking at it right here, guys.
Just down in the corner.
Right there.
We don't even get a hero shot of the tiger. But we couldn't get a hero shot of the tiger in there because the edit had already been locked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks great, though.
It does look good.
I mean, it does add a lot to this.
Yeah. And then this is this isn't stock footage, but there's going to be a stock footage shot in a minute that was inserted into this fight scene. It was that right there. Intruder alert on the loudspeaker was stock footage of just a loudspeaker, because we didn't have a shot. Nobody ever thought to get a shot of the loudspeaker in that location. And then in VFX, we added that vibration coming off of it.
And the motivation for this was just like, we're missing a story beat here in this scene.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we just need to fill it with something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the Mellow Devil montage in episode 4, we have a number of shots of needles and drug use that we got from Motion Array or Adobe, one of the. So that shot behind Andy Milonakis of drugs and a needle, it's kind of hard to see, but we took a shot of drugs and Graham, you made them purple, or somebody made them purple.
Yeah. Very complicated.
And then
effect.
This, again, it was from Motion Array of just interviewee in shadows, and then we added some voiceover over the top of it in order to create this montage. Yeah, and then those 3 shots of different drugs, needles, everything is all stock footage, because again, we're not going to go film somebody taking a pill or injecting themselves when we can just buy it for
right. And I'll just say this
$10.
too, because I think that for a while there was a stigma against stock footage from a lot of filmmakers, because everybody wants to be like, you went out and shot every shot yourself, type of thing. But that is, I think, really changed, especially I'd say over the last decade, because the quality of stuff you can get is remarkable. And it also opens you up to a lot of different ideas, and every major production uses stock footage. And just watch the end credits of pretty much any blockbuster you watch. You're going to see Getty Images, Shutterstock, iStock Photo, whatever, all credited in there. In fact, there's even a major Hollywood film that I was watching a few years ago and noticed a shot that I knew the actual filmmakers who'd created that shot.
Do you want to say what the film?
It's in the movie Ad Astra.
Okay.
So in Ad Astra, and I was sitting there watching, and of course, I'm like Sam and probably like Graham. I have a weird memory for almost every shot that I've ever seen. So I was sitting in the theater, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, like that, I know that shot. I've seen that shot. And sure enough, I knew the filmmakers who actually created that shot that was then bought off of a stock footage site and used in the movie Ad Astra. So and it was used very well, and it worked, and it fit the style and everything like that. But every major Hollywood film is, relying on stock footage. So I think that stigma is what I'm saying is really
you get into the edit and you realize we need a montage here, and we need to fill it with something. We need some emotional trigger, like shots of wheat or the sunrise or something like that you didn't get on set, and you're not going to send out a crew to go get it.
Right. And if anything, again, like you see a lot of the stuff that's been created, and it can be very inspirational to what you're doing in your edit as well. So
go ahead.
What do you think accounts for the increasing acceptance of that? Because I would speculate it's something to do with the rise of like prosumer home video capability. That people are out there with their own cameras at home, just getting really high quality footage.
Yes,
that anybody can use.
Yes, and I think that there's so much now that before it was a limited library, and so people might be able to notice it. Like, okay, I noticed that shot because I again had some familiarity with the filmmakers, but in general, there's so much. There's the ability to take a red camera or a black magic camera or whatever and go shoot shots of downtown LA or who knows what and put it on a site is so available now that there's just so much to draw from. There's almost probably not even enough movies to be made to now pull from the amount of high quality stock footage that's even being created. So and yes, just the ability to go and do it. Pretty much anybody could do it and then create a account on one of these stock footage sites and sell their own, footage.
So that's the main type of stock footage that most people use in movies and TV shows. But we used a lot of different stuff that people usually don't use. Now, most people don't know this, but any piece of media created by the government is automatically in the public domain. It has no copyright. It can be used by anyone. So what we did a lot of was use historical footage, government footage, World War II footage to fill out some of the big battle sequences and establishing shots, especially with the Russians. But here is one of my favorite moments from the show. It's the opening of episode 2 when Van Dawson, played by Hal Ocean, is talking about the impact that Marvelous Man had on the world. And this is footage from the Why We Fight series. So in World War II, the U.S. government started it was a propaganda program, but we were on the right side of World War II, so it was good. It was good propaganda. They hired some of the America's best filmmakers, John Ford, John Huston, William Wyler, to go film movies about World War II. Soldiers, what was happening, why we were fighting. It was called the Why We Fight series. And because those movies were commissioned by the federal government, they are in the public domain, and it's footage shot by some of the greatest filmmakers of all time. So we took some color World War II footage, and then Graham added Marvelous Man into it.
These were some of the earliest CG shots I ever did, too. I was still very much learning Cinema 4D.
So you created this Marvelous Man model.
This came from somewhere else. This already existed. Okay. If I were to do these again, I would make my own model, because this one was kind of a little bit low quality, but
right. So you inherited a Marvelous Man.
I inherited
model from
a Marvelous
previous
Man model,
yeah,
and did my best with it. But yeah,
I love the previous shot too. How it has the soldiers scanning from left
Right.
to right.
yeah. Part of the process of this was just going through like hours of archival footage and just looking for shots where like someone's looking like awestruck or something, you know.
yeah, and we recorded this monologue of Hal Ocean just looking straight into the camera and saying these lines, and it worked. It was good, but actually seeing Marvelous Man in World War II, I think it adds a whole nother layer of power to it.
Right.
And then there's, of course, the Russian footage that we use throughout the show, both in Russia and for Nighthawk's armies in episode 7. This is actually footage from the annual Victory Day parade in Moscow, which they, film in HD and broadcast to the world, again, as propaganda for the Putin regime and the glory of mighty Russia.
Right.
So we took it, and we got these crowd shots. We got the tanks coming through, and we added our own mechs to it to enhance the footage this great epic footage. And so
Great work.
Graham has a little behind the scenes of
It's just like a very quick sort of breakdown of just what these look like in the program as I'm working with them, and how they're composited into the scene.
Were these assets you purchased, or did you design them?
They were modified assets. So I purchased them, then I made some changes and rigged them up a bit. But yeah, I see just the skeleton there, which has a lot of unnecessary parts. The big process of doing this is trying to match, a lot of archival footage, the older stuff, especially in World War II, but even this stuff, which is more recent, has just really heavy grain and imperfections because, just the film quality is not as good as what we have now.
Right.
So just trying to match, the renders to that level. Oh yeah, here's a much better example of that.
Yeah. So this is footage of Nighthawk talking before a governing body of some kind, the UN something, but it's taken from footage of Adolf Hitler addressing the German parliament. Because obviously at this point in the show, in episode 7, we're presenting Nighthawk as the return of fascism. So why not just link him to the worst fascist regime in history?
Fun fact, that Nighthawk model is literally just the Marvelous Man model, but black and with a little helmet.
Nice.
So
how did you match the film grain to try to get it so close?
There are some tools in After Effects, which is the program I'm using for compositing, that allow you to add grain. And they don't have a lot of fine tuning ability. Like you can change the size of it, so you can have like big grain or small grain. But this, obviously, this archival stuff has really like kind of complex and random grain because it's like extremely old and degraded film with all kinds of spots. So I used some of the built-in filters in After Effects to add some manual grain to it, and then took some of the background footage from the lighter areas on the wall behind them and overlaid that on top of the added parts just to get some of the natural, like kind of organic grain. And it mostly worked. I think it result is sufficient.
Well, especially for such a quick shot that's, again, part of a montage. Yeah.
It's cool.
Well, let's take a look at some of the stuff you did in episode 1. So obviously this is Marvelous Man stopping the Kennedy assassination. I assume this is just the Zapruder footage.
Yes.
I assume before the.
Yes.
Yeah.
So obviously a key part of this, the change that had to be made to this is that Kennedy survives this footage. So trying to fill in the rest of this shot with non-gory a version was like kind of the main challenge, and then just adding Marvelous Man on top and matching all the grain once again.
So is this post shot?
This is the actual shot when it happens.
Okay. So you just took out
I took out that event.
Okay.
And carried it forward for the rest of the shot as if it had not happened.
Yeah. There's obviously just a stock footage of Kennedy and Khrushchev, and then here's footage of Richard Nixon where you've added some of the other superheroes to the
right.
Yeah.
And luckily we added some like just additional degradation on top of this footage just to try to sell it as much as possible, because again, these models are not that great. So
who's this guy over here?
that is intended to be Golden Goddess.
Golden Goddess.
Oh, okay.
But it's literally just a model of Wonder Woman
I see. Gotcha.
that I made glow to obscure it as much as possible.
And then here's Khrushchev's assassination. So you took footage of Khrushchev in a car and then just
Kind of blew him up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you would with any character whose head explodes in the rest of the show.
Yeah. What I liked about this little section of footage is that it has a sudden kind of just shaky section where it looks like something happened, but nothing really did. It was just a careless cameraman.
So you just happen to find like the perfect, it shakes there at the end. You just happen to find the perfect,
Yeah.
and then this is another shot from episode 1. This is the great giant Nazi robot that Marvelous Man destroys.
Yeah.
Where did you get this footage? What was this from?
This was, again, just some archival World War II footage, just showing destruction in whatever city this is. I'm afraid I don't remember. But yeah, just airplanes doing flyovers of destruction. And I thought it looked like a battlefield that we could put a robot into. And these are the raw renders before the compositing. It's, just kind of very simple, pretty stiff. And then in the final shot.
So great.
What's so interesting to me is that I never noticed the wires from the airplane before, because I was always focused on the action. And it wasn't until I saw the shot without the robot and Marvelous Man in it that I noticed the wires from the airplane. This is. I think this is some of your best work.
Yeah, I was really happy with how this turned out. If I were doing it again, there are a few things I would change. I didn't have like a proper HDRI on this shot with the robot in particular, which is it's like an environment lighting thing. So if you look at the reflections, you can tell they're very like general. They're just like flat colors.
Right. There's no reflection of the building in the.
Right. So, if I were doing this again, the first thing I would do to make it better is to use a proper environment texture. Again, I was like pretty new to CG when I was doing this. As like an obvious
thing. It still
thing
works though, because the metal just looks very like kind of dull style.
It kind of helps sell the kind of old fashioned, 50s robot vibe where they're just like very chromy. Mm-hmm. So I think it works.
What are you doing motion tracking in for a shot like a grainy, shaky footage like that?
I try to use a built-in tracker in either After Effects or Cinema 4D or Blender or whatever. For a lot of this archival footage, that doesn't work very well because it jumps around so much.
Yeah.
So you're mostly just hand tracking it. Just frame by
really?
frame. Yeah.
So you are literally going frame by frame.
Just frame by frame, especially because there are a lot of duplicated frames.
Yeah.
Where like,
that's so cool.
If you're trying to track it automatically, you're just going to end up with a mess because it just doesn't work very well.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about with regards to stock footage was episode 7's big battle sequence between Anubis and Hawk Global Defense, which we've talked about in the past, of the creative challenge that we knew there had to be some huge conflict between Anubis and Hawk Global Defense. And all that existed was pretty much the family getting killed on the battleship by Hawk Global Defense soldiers. We wanted something much more epic than that, to really show how powerful Nighthawk and Hawk Global Defense was, how much havoc they could wreak. And I was inspired by this movie from 1977 called Wizards by the animator Ralph Bakshi.
One of Sam's favorite.
Wizards, despite being an animated movie, is very, very much not for kids. And my mom bought a VHS of it back when I was like 8 years old, because she just saw animation, magic. I'm sure this will be good for my son to watch. Traumatized me. Absolutely traumatized.
Explains so much.
Every kid needs one of those.
Wizards, yeah. Wizards is a movie about, you're going to hear the influence on this show, is a movie set in a fantasy world that's post-apocalyptic after World War III. And this evil wizard and his demonic army basically resurrects Nazi propaganda footage and the Nazi war machine in order to conquer the land of the good wizards and fairies and elves.
Nice.
And Bakshi didn't have enough money from 20th Century Fox to create the battle scenes that he wanted to create. This was actually the same year as George Lucas didn't get the money from 20th Century Fox to create the Death Star battle sequence that he wanted to make, because Fox was just cutting corners all over the place. So what Bakshi did was he took footage from Andrei Rublev, Ivan the Terrible, various other pieces of historical footage, World War II footage, stuff from like the Fox vault of Westerns, and animated over the top of it. You can see he's just added horns to World War II footage.
Like
Planes just changing the color slightly.
just posterized.
Yeah. To create the impression that it's kind of a cartoon, like just adding the mouth and horns. The foreground is obviously animated, but all this stuff is footage from Ivan the Terrible.
I can just picture young Sam
Just
watching.
vibing.
So we'll compare that to what we ended up creating for the start of episode 7. So again, this is more stock footage from the Russian victory parade, that now it's Nighthawk instead of the Russians. That previous shot is also, this is a shot of helicopters flying during the Russian Victory Day parade. Just added the statue of Nighthawk over the top of it. Here's the shot we already talked about that Graham created with Nazi footage, obviously more Nazi stock footage. And then this, we have a couple shots in here that are Angry Metal, our main animation company, that they animated over the top of footage from World War II, again, taking the Bakshi inspiration. So yeah, flag and pile of dead bodies over burning footage. We have here, I love this shot of the Hawk Global Defense soldiers sitting on a tank as it drives past. Again, this is all just from the Why We Fight series.
That's great.
Yeah, refugees, dead bodies next to the refugees walking. Then we add, CGI planes in that previous shot over. And then this is, again, Russian Victory Day Parade that we are changing the...
It's funny because those clouds look like a matte painting. Those don't look real.
I think the clouds were added to make it, but that shot of the helicopters. And so this is also from the Russian Victory Day Parade. They mounted cameras on the helicopters. We took the footage of the helicopters and created a CGI background. So the helicopters are real stock footage and the background is CGI.
Nice.
Yeah, more footage of animation on top of the live action. When I originally pitched this to Angry Metal, like, why don't we just recreate the shots fully in animation? No, I want it to look...
We're doing wizards.
We're doing wizards. I've wanted to do this since I was 8 years old. This is
That's
my
great.
favorite, maybe
This
my
one's
favorite
great.
shot in the entire show.
It works so well.
The Anubis soldiers pushing this piece of artillery, and I'm like, I want it to look like we as filmmakers are being extremely intentional with all this stuff, and not just throwing a bunch of animation at the screen. Yeah, it works so well. They did just an amazing job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that works fantastically.
Yeah. Yeah, World War II footage mixed with some more of the Russian. So this, again, is the Russian Victory Day Parade. It's a camera inside the cockpit of a fighter jet. And we kept...
Augmented,
Yeah.
the little symbols.
Added the HUD display in front and changed the background. But, we're never going to get footage from the inside of a cockpit. We're never going to film that. We're not Tom Cruise doing Top Gun. But all this footage, because it's created by a government, is public domain. And if Vladimir Putin wants to sue me for it, he can go right ahead. Yeah.
That's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, we were just simply incapable of creating something at the scale that we needed to at the opening of episode 7. So we had to find creative solutions to the problem. And I know when I pitched the whole idea of a big battle sequence to you, Ken, you were a little bit skeptical that we would be able to pull any of this off. Mm-hmm. But I think the mixture of the mediums works really well, and it's all rounded out by the copious use of stock footage that, again, free. Yeah. Completely free.
Yeah.
And we had already set such a precedent with this show as far as the mixed media thing that it totally works and doesn't feel like we're just cheaping out.
Yeah. If anything, it feels as though it's what it should be. When, like you kind of just said, like being intentional in terms of how you're using it, I think is one of the keys. So it's not necessarily, because some people might look at it as like, oh, it's like a crutch in a weird way because you can't go and grab that. But what it is taking it and then putting your own spin on it. And so it becomes something new and original and fresh and cool, and allows Sam to live out his 8-year-old dream of animating over stock footage.
And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah. Everything in his life has led him to this moment. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Bootleg Universe podcast. We'll be back next time with some more insights into the making of Guardians of Justice.